Welcome back. Harmony's back on the bench today. I did a little bit of work to it. I've done just a quick polish on the front and the back. I did actually end up trying to blend that little nail polish repair. It did okay, but it's just not looking like it's going to be worth it to try to level the rest of the touch-ups. So I finished all the other touch-ups, and I did try to level that one and a couple that were in here, and I left the ones that were in here alone after I did that. But this one I went back and recoated it after I did. I'm not sure if I'll try to address those again, but we'll see. Anyway, I got the pickups back in. They're just mounted back exactly the way they came out. I did clean them up just to get the hair and fuzz and everything else that was in there out. And I was just about to reinstall the Strat buttons. Just got my new felts. I looked these guitars up online. I found a couple of them. One of them sold for a lot more than I thought it should have on eBay or Reverb. But anyway, I don't think that price was typical. It was 3 times what I paid. But anyway, looking at those examples that I found, I don't think these things came with felts on the Strat buttons, but it's not going to hurt to add them. One of the things I was trying to figure out from looking at the ones online is just, what these things came with originally and how they were wired. I did find a good picture of the wiring in one Reverb listing, so I was happy about that. But it's not obvious to me, even from that good picture of the wiring, like how things were supposed to be set up, because the guitar that I saw online had multiple tone capacitors in it. You couldn't see exactly where all the wires were going. But I'm almost positive that this thing has 2 volume controls. So I drew up my own wiring diagram. I like this site. It's called guitarelectronics.com. They have good wiring resources there. They didn't have, obviously, a diagram for like a harmony discovery, or even for an SSH guitar with 2 volumes and 1 tone and 3 toggle switches for the pickups. That's very weird and rare. So you can kind of learn over time what the components do, and I just drew up my own diagram. Maybe I'll show that later, but I'm just kind of doing some reassembly for the moment. So I guess stick around. I'll just do some installation of the pots, maybe the jack, put the trim in loosely, get the springs back installed, just a few things like that. I do have to clean up the nasty tremolo still, but I can at least do the jack plate here. I spent a little bit of time with this plate test fitting it and making sure that it matches the contour of the body, and all that amounted to was holding it up to the contour of the body, and then seeing where the high spots were, and then just sort of bending it. You can bend this with your hands, but once you get down toward the ends, you actually kind of might need a pair of pliers or something to kind of make the radius what it should be. Nothing to this but to screw it in though. Alright, well that looks much better than what was on there previously. Yeah, I was looking for some information on these guitars online, and Harmony is such a weird brand. I think I may have said it before, but Harmony is like one of the oldest guitar manufacturers, but their history has been real spotty because they've gone in and out of business in various ways. Either they stopped producing guitars, or they sold their name, or whatever. I'm not even sure. Like the history of that company from like the 1970s, 80s through really recently is not very well documented. But they are a functioning company today. You can actually go to their website and check out their new models. They don't look anything like this or anything like any real current designs really of any other major manufacturers. So that's kind of cool that they're unique, but it's pretty obvious from looking at the current company that they don't really take any sort of I don't know, I wouldn't call it responsibility, but they're not any sort of a historian over the older stuff. So I guess that's their right as the current owners. But anyway, I'm gonna try to save this one. Okay, well, I cleaned up all my pots. All you do is basically get your soldering iron out, pull all the old wires and everything off of them, and then you can use a tool like a solder sucker to clean out the holes. You know, you just heat up the solder that's in the hole on the pot, and then you can just literally suck it out like a syringe. If you haven't seen me do that before, it's on several of my other videos, so I didn't think it necessary to repeat. But I'm just going to drop these through. I went ahead and pre-soldered. One of the things you do on a volume pot is you ground one of the legs, and these were not done this way. But I like to bend the leg back to the base of the pot and solder it to the base. You can look at wiring diagrams and see them grounded, but until you see one done in person, that might not be obvious that that's what's going on. But that's the way I like to wire them, so that's what we did. Now, I'm just going to keep the same orientation that they did in the factory. I thought about turning some of these, but that's not necessary. Now, remember I keep all my stuff in bags. That really helped me on this one because I don't have to go searching through a big bag of screws for the right nuts and washers. I kept them all right here together. Okay, well that's got my knobs back in place, or pots rather, and I've got to get knobs on there. I won't do that until probably the end. Let's see, I guess I'll mount the switches next, but I don't have those cleaned up yet, so let me do that first and I'll be back. So I've been doing a lot of extra work in here. I've been wrapping up some of my wiring. I think I left off where I was putting the switches back in and I didn't have the wiring removed from the switches yet. And so I got those cleaned up. I've got everything mounted to the front. All that involves is just putting the nuts back on, tightening things down. The wiring is a little complex, but I basically replicated what was from the factory, so nothing really special here except the jack wasn't really connected properly before, and so I basically connected it kind of like a P-base, where it's got its ground to the last tone pot and the signal wires coming off the tone pot instead of coming off one of the volume pots. So, you know, that's fine. It's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. But essentially, this thing has 2 volumes, 1 tone. These 2 switches here have the pickups wired directly to these switches, so neck and middle. And then this switch down here is the humbucker. These 2 switches run their signal feed to the first volume pot. This switch runs its signal feed to the middle volume pot, or the lower volume pot, depending on how you think about it. And that should be pretty cool. I left the capacitor alone. It's at a 0.047. I figure it's either going to see a humbucker, or it'll see 2 singles, or there's several combinations where that could be a preferable value. So the only other change that I really made in here, other than just making it all look nicer, was I changed this ground wire on the bridge to something that's a little bit more flexible than that rigid one that came on it, and I used that rigid wire as my ground wire between the pots. So anyway, pretty simple. I don't have any ground loops in here, but I do have grounds going everywhere, and I really couldn't avoid it just because of the way things were arranged, and I wanted to keep my pickup wires shielded for as long as I possibly could, so their shields jump off right about where I need to separate to run the signal wire over. So anyway, I got the tremolo just loosely set back in place here with the springs on it. All I did was install the studs, just run them in, and this is just the tremolo base plate. I've taken the saddles off because I'm in the middle of polishing everything, and this is just some paper that's keeping the back of the bridge from scratching the body while I've got it set up with no string tension. But yeah, what else? New jack plate. Same jack, kept the same jack. The jack's not bad, and the jack actually says made in Japan on it, so I'm kind of wondering now, is this guitar Korean or is it Japanese? I'm still leaning toward Korean, mostly just because of the way the neck feels. But anyway, I'm closer to getting the neck back on it here. I think I haven't changed anything that's going to affect the fitment, so yeah. It's going to look like a guitar again soon. Okay, back at it with the harmony. Just going to mount the neck. I have re-drilled the neck holes in the body to 3/16 because this uses a Fender style mounting system, and that's what made the screws able to pass through the body without binding. See, that's what you want. So that's that. Alright, I got my saddles mounted too. Got these just sort of loosely installed. I polished them up. I tend to try to guess at some of the heights and the intonation before I put them on, but you can totally adjust all that stuff later. I guess probably off camera I'll give the electronics a quick test just to make sure that they're working. And then, as all I'm going to do on that is plug it into an amp and probably tap on the pickups with a screwdriver just to make sure that they make some noise. And I think I'm about ready for strings, so that's probably next. Let me get started on the stringing. I'm using the same old Ernie Ball hybrid slinky that I use on most things, and it's a good set. I'm going to start with the heaviest string, work my way down. Once I get a little bit of tension on the tremolo, I should be able to pull that paper out of there. I did lightly pre-slot the nut. Can't go all the way without being sure that there's enough of a space between the nut and the or the string in the first fret, rather. Probably could have slotted that a little deeper. Go ahead and do that now. I'll get a close-up of this later, but I'm just using a nut file that's a particular size that's, you know, within 6 or so thousandths of the diameter of the string. And I use smaller files as I work my way down, but I'll show the whole process later. This is really not super technical right now. I'm just trying to get the string installed, and then I'll worry about the height. Again, I say this in a lot of videos, but when you're stringing, shooting for about 2 to 3 wraps on most of your strings. You can go more if your tuners have room on the post, but that's all that you really need. And to get 2 to 3 wraps, you basically measure roughly 2 to 3 inches of slack. Now, an easier way to do that is to just count tuners. So use the tuners as your measurement. Stretch the string relatively tightly through the hole. Measure over 2 tuners, pull that much slack back, and then tighten it up. And I measure, and I wrap under on every pass. So as I'm going around the string, I'm wrapping under my last pass. And I don't trim my strings until I'm sure that I'm done. Because if I take these off and put them back on again, that happens a lot easier if they're not cut. But I don't want to do that. I'm going to avoid that at all costs. Installing them again, that is. So as I tighten the strings, the bridge is rising. So I just want to go ahead and back these off a little bit, tighten up the string tension or the spring tension in the back, and then redo this. Okay. I like to use a long screwdriver for this. And this is a dance. Might need another spring or two. Well, let's do that instead. I don't have a lot of room left on these. Now we're getting somewhere. Yeah, alright. Start over. Yeah, it's really close. Basically what I'm doing is I'll tune the strings, and I do it in weird order sometimes because the tightness of the string will draw the tremolo up in weird ways. Excuse me. But whenever I get it to a point where the tremolo is a little too tight, that's the easiest thing to deal with, because I get all the strings tuned to the correct pitch, loosen the tremolo out a couple of, maybe like a quarter turn or something, retune. I don't have to like detune, tighten, and then it's like more steps if the bridge is too high. So right now the bridge is too low, so I should say the back of the bridge is too low. I don't know about the whole height of the bridge. Gotta wait and do that with the action. What I'm shooting for is I want that level. You can adjust it to taste after it's level, but that's what I was shooting for, is kind of a zero position. And so that's where we are now. Okay, so with the bridge level, I was just looking at the action. I set the, well, I should say there's two ways to adjust action on a guitar like this. Because it has adjustable saddles and an adjustable bridge, you can do it in both places, but the big adjustments come out of the bridge posts and the finer adjustments come out of the saddles. So if one string needs to move independently of the others, the saddle is the only way to do that. So what I've done is just gotten a bird's eye view of the action here. Literally, I mean, the action is up in the sky right now. The action on the bass side is like 0.14, and the action on the treble side is 0.11. Let me take care of that stupid air conditioner and I'll cut the video back on. Okay, that should take care of some background noise. Sorry about that. So the bass side is 0.14 and the treble side is 0.11. So we've got to come down quite a bit on both sides. So I will be tightening the bridge screws. So we're at 13 and 10. Almost 11 and almost 8, or 0.08. But I think I've reached a point where I'd like my bridge to float just a little bit more. 0.11 and somewhere in between 0.07 and 0.08. 10, 07. Okay, well, we're getting closer. I think at this point I'm going to stop adjusting the bridge. I'm really close to where I would have to stop anyway. I'm going to give it a little bit more room to float. Just loosen those springs in the back, quarter turn on each screw. Let's go half. That looks good. Have to come up over here, almost sitting on the body. It's all a big dance. I'll do the tuning and the leveling and then the saddle height adjustments and the bridge adjustments and the nut and the relief, and it just all affects each other. So oh, and pickup height is now in the way. Did I mention that? Okay, 10 and 7, so it's not anywhere near good. I'm just trying to find a starting point, and that's as low as I'm going to be able to get the bridge. Everything else is going to have to come out of the saddles, which thankfully right now are quite high. But one thing I hate about the Fender style saddles, and it just is something you really just can't avoid, is these screws that they're basically set screws, but Fender used them for saddle height. But these screws that go through the saddle, if you have to lower the saddle too much, they stick out the top quite a bit, and when you're playing, they can really tear up your hand. So I'll have to adjust, or probably take some meat off of these two screws here, just to keep from completely tearing up my palm. When you're adjusting saddles, you want to make sure that you keep the saddle level. So you want about the same amount of turns in each screw. Well, we're in acoustic guitar specs. Let's keep going. I think, though, I don't want to go all the way down because I still have the nut to deal with. I'd like to try to get them within 10,000ths of where they should be, and then I can adjust the nut and bring that down some, and that will affect things. So I don't want to go too low and then mess up the nut cutting. That sounds awful. Alright, I'm at 80,000ths here. Let's, before we get too far, check out the neck relief. The radius on this neck is a 10, and if you look up spec for neck relief, a fender spec for neck relief on a 10 radius neck, it's 10 thousandths. That's measured at the 8th fret with a capo on the 1st fret and the 17th fret fretted. So essentially you're trying to fret the guitar near the neck to the body joint, because this tongue doesn't really move that much. The truss rod doesn't affect it anyway. And the truss rod, most of its action is going to be in the middle of these 2 points. So if you put a capo on the 1st fret and you fret the guitar here, then your maximum neck relief would be in this area here. So I'm focusing on the 8th fret. You can do 7th or 8th. It's not a huge difference, but right now with the 8th, I have some neck relief, but it's not 10. 10 moves a little too much. The string moves up as I put a 10 under it. Let me sneak up on 10. I'm going to start with the 6. Yeah, I think that's actually it. A little too much movement with 7. And as I insert that, I'm just looking for the string to raise up off of the fretboard a little bit more than it was. I'm also feeling for drag on the feeler gauge. That's why they're called feeler gauges. We'll say though it's really close to 7, so I could probably leave this neck alone if I really wanted to. But I'm going to give it one more tweak. And I mean, the real pain of this is this does not have a truss rod that's accessible from outside anywhere. I mean, I can't even see it right now. So that means that I have to detune this, take the neck off the guitar, and tighten the truss rod, put it all back together. I've got enough for one video today. I'm going to cut things here. Just remember, follow the series by subscribing to the channel, or you can check out the playlist. I think I've got one more of the videos left in this guitar, and then I'll move on to the next project. But just remember, like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Everything helps me out. Thanks a lot. See you next time.